In a quiet town where stories lived only in books, a forgotten kitten arrived, cold, abandoned, and silent. No one knew then that this tiny creature would one day warm an entire community, not with words, but with a purr, a gaze, and a heart, full of quiet magic. This is the story of how a single act of kindness turned a lost life into a living legend, and how one small cat gave a town the greatest story it had ever known. Found among the book. On a bitterly cold winter morning, the town of Maplewood lay wrapped in a thick blanket of snow, its streets quiet and still beneath the pale grey sky. The wind whispered through the bare branches, carrying with it the chill that seeped deep into bone and spirit alike. In the heart of this sleepy town stood the small public library, a place that had long been a refuge for the curious and the lonely, a sanctuary filled with stories waiting to be discovered. Evelyn Carter, the head librarian, arrived early as usual, her breath forming clouds in the frosty air. She unlocked the heavy wooden door and stepped inside, greeted by the familiar scent of aging paper and polished wood. The warmth of the room seeped into her fingers and toes, chasing away the bite of winter. But as she moved toward the front desk, something caught her attention. A faint, distressed sound coming from the book return slot. Curious and cautious, Evelyn approached. Peering into the dark metal box, she saw a small, trembling figure curled up among the discarded books, a tiny kitten, no bigger than her hand, with wide, frightened eyes and fur matted from the cold. He was shivering violently, his delicate body barely making a sound beyond the softest of mews. Evelyn's heart clenched. Who could have left such a fragile creature to face the bitter night alone? The town was no stranger to hardship, but this felt like a cruel wound carved into its quiet soul. Without hesitation, she reached in, gently scooping the kitten into her hands. He was fragile, trembling, but as soon as he felt the warmth of her palms, he nestled closer, seeking safety and comfort. Evelyn wrapped him in her scarf and hurried to the staff room, where a small heater and a soft blanket awaited. As the kitten slowly began to regain warmth, Evelyn studied him more closely. His fur was a patchwork of white and grey, and his amber eyes held a spark that hinted at a fierce spirit beneath the fragile surface. She decided then and there that he would not be another forgotten soul. This little cat, abandoned and scared, would find a home within these walls. Word of the kitten's discovery spread quickly through the library staff in the small town. For many, it was a bright spot in the otherwise cold winter, a reminder that even in the harshest moments, kindness could be found. Evelyn named him Oliver, after her grandfather, who had once been the town's beloved storyteller. Like Oliver, her grandfather had a way of bringing warmth and wonder into the lives of those around him. From that day forward, Oliver became more than just a rescued animal. He became a symbol of hope, a living story that intertwined with the lives of the townspeople who visited the library seeking knowledge, comfort, or simply a quiet place to be. The little library cat's journey had just begun, but already he had touched a heart, one that beat for the community and all its stories waiting to be told. A name written in paws. Oliver settled quickly into his new home among the shelves and quiet corners of the Maplewood Public Library. Theon's empty book return slot was now his refuge, but soon it became clear he was meant for much more than just a hidden nook. Evelyn watched as Oliver's curiosity blossomed. Each day he prowled the aisles with cautious paws, weaving between stacks of books like a tiny guardian of stories. His amber eyes sparkled as he explored the world of paper and ink, and the soft rustle of pages seemed to be his favorite soundtrack. It wasn't long before visitors began to notice him. A shy little girl named Lily, who came every Saturday to read fairy tales, found a gentle friend in Oliver. She would sit cross-legged on the floor, whispering secrets as he curled beside her, purring softly like a lullaby. Older patrons, too, found comfort in the small cat's presence. Mr. Thompson, a widower who spent afternoons in the poetry section, often stroked Oliver's fur as if the act could ease his aching loneliness. And Mrs. Alvarez, battling illness, smiled whenever Oliver brushed past her wheelchair, a flicker of joy in her tired eyes. Oliver had a way of reading the unspoken, sensing when a visitor needed a quiet companion or simply a nudge of affection. Evelyn marveled at how the tiny cat seemed to weave invisible threads between people, connecting strangers through shared moments of warmth. As the weeks passed, the town began to embrace Oliver as their own. Flyers appeared around Maplewood, inviting everyone to meet Oliver, the library cat. Soon, children clamored for stories that featured their furry friend, and adults found themselves lingering just a little longer in the library, drawn by his gentle presence. Evelyn smiled as she watched Oliver curl up on the window ledge, basking in the afternoon sun. His paws left tiny prints on the pages of a book she'd set aside, as if he were writing his own story, a story of hope, love, and quiet courage. One evening, as the library closed and the last visitor stepped out into the snowy streets, Evelyn knelt beside Oliver. She traced a gentle finger over his soft fur and whispered, "You've given this place a new heartbeat, Oliver. You're more than just a cat. You're part of our story now." And with a soft, contented purr, Oliver seemed to say he understood. The cat who read faces. Oliver had a special kind of magic. It wasn't in grand gestures or loud proclamations, but in the quiet way he seemed to understand the world around him, especially the hearts of the people who came to the Maplewood Public Library. Evelyn often marveled at how Oliver would settle himself beside someone who seemed burdened by sorrow or loneliness, as if sensing exactly when a gentle touch or a soft purr was needed most. He was like a silent counselor, listening without judgment, offering comfort without words. One chilly afternoon, a man named James entered the library. His shoulders were heavy with grief, and his eyes held the shadow of loss. James had recently lost his wife and found himself adrift in a sea of memories too painful to face alone. He wandered through the aisles, fingers trailing along spines of books, searching for something to anchor him. Oliver noticed immediately. The little cat padded quietly to James's side and brushed against his leg, then climbed gently onto his lap. James looked down, surprised by the sudden company. For the first time in weeks, a tear slipped from his eye, but this one was mingled with a faint glimmer of relief. "You're a good friend, aren't you, Oliver?" James whispered. "Lisa, my cat," responded with a soft purr, as if to say, "I'm here." Word spread of Oliver's uncanny ability to sense hearts in need. The library transformed from a mere building of books into a haven where healing began. Children recovering from illness found courage in Oliver's playful antics. Elderly patrons who felt forgotten found purpose in caring for him. Strangers who once passed each other with guarded eyes now shared smiles over the little cat curled between them. Evelyn often found herself watching these moments, her own heart swelling with quiet pride. Oliver wasn't just a mascot or a pet. He was a bridge, a thread weaving the community closer together. One evening, after the library had emptied and the soft glow of lamps bathed the shelves, Evelyn sat beside Oliver and whispered, "You read more than faces, little one. You read souls." And in his slow, steady purring, Oliver seemed to promise he always would. Tales and tales. As the seasons changed, so did the rhythm of life at the Maplewood Public Library. Oliver had grown from a fragile kitten into a graceful cat with sleek grey fur and eyes that gleamed like amber jewels. But it wasn't his appearance that captured hearts. It was the way he became part of the stories unfolding every day within the library's walls. Children flocked to story time, their laughter mingling with the crackling of the fireplace. Oliver was always there, weaving between small legs, pausing to brush a whisker against a giggling child or curl up on a pile of picture books. The children believed he was a magical storyteller, a guardian of fairy tales and secrets whispered among pages. Evelyn noticed that Oliver seemed to sense which stories touched people the most. When a shy girl named Mia read aloud, Oliver would sit quietly beside her, his steady presence boosting her confidence. When an elderly man recited poetry, Oliver would rest his head on the man's knee, as if listening intently. The library became a place where stories weren't just read, they were lived. One afternoon, a woman named Clara visited. She was new to town, her face shadowed by grief after losing her husband. She wandered the aisles aimlessly until Oliver appeared, his tail flicking as he approached her. Tentatively, Clara knelt down, and Oliver curled into her lap, purring softly. That day, Clara found solace not just in books, but in the gentle companionship of a small library cat. She returned often, bringing her young son, who delighted in Oliver's playful spirit. The community began to see Oliver as more than just a pet. He was a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the hardest times, there were stories worth sharing and tales worth telling. Evelyn often reflected on how a single act of kindness, the rescue of a tiny kitten abandoned on a cold night, had blossomed into something far greater. Oliver had become a living story, one that touched every heart that walked through the library doors. As winter gave way to spring, the library bloomed with new life, and Oliver's story continued to weave itself into the fabric of Maplewood. When the town needed a miracle, the harsh winter had finally begun to thaw, but Maplewood was still shrouded in a quiet sorrow. The small town, like many others, had faced hardships, jobs lost, families stretched thin, and a lingering weariness that settled into bones and spirits. The library, once a refuge, felt the weight of those struggles too. Fewer visitors came through its doors, and even the usual warmth seemed dimmer. One evening, as Evelyn was preparing to close, a sudden storm swept through the town. Fierce winds rattled the windows, and snow blew in swirling sheets, turning familiar streets into unrecognizable paths. The power flickered and then went out completely, plunging the library into darkness. Evelyn's heart raced, not just because of the storm, but because she knew there were people who relied on the library's warmth and safety. She lit candles and gathered blankets, hoping the storm wouldn't keep everyone away. As she moved quietly through the stacks, Oliver appeared at her side, his eyes bright and steady despite the chaos outside. It was as if he understood the fear and uncertainty filling the building. Just then, the front door creaked open, and a handful of townspeople, shivering, tired but determined, stepped inside. They had nowhere else to go, caught in the storm and seeking shelter from the cold. Night. The library became a haven that evening, with Oliver weaving between knees and curling up beside trembling hands. His gentle purring was a balm to worried hearts, a reminder that even in the darkest times, there was comfort to be found. Evelyn watched as the community came together, strangers sharing stories, hot tea, and quiet laughter. The storm raged on outside, but inside the library, a miracle was unfolding, not of grand gestures, but of simple kindness and shared humanity. Oliver seemed to sense the importance of the moment. He climbed into the lap of Mrs. Henderson, an elderly woman who rarely left her home, and stayed there until her hands stopped trembling. He nestled beside Tommy, a boy scared by the thunder, and purred him to sleep. That night, as the storm passed and dawn crept over the snow-covered town, Maplewood felt a little stronger, a little closer. Oliver, the small cat who had once been abandoned and forgotten, had become a quiet beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the worst storms, love and community could shine through. Evelyn closed the library doors with a grateful heart, knowing that Oliver's story was far from over. He had touched the world of this small town in ways no one had expected, and the best chapters were still ahead. Whispers in the stacks. The gentle hum of the library had changed over the months. Where once only the rustling of pages and soft footsteps echoed, Now whispers of Oliver's legend filled the air like a comforting melody. His presence had transformed the Maplewood Public Library into more than just a building. It had become a sanctuary of healing and hope. People came from neighboring towns, drawn by stories of the small grey cat whose amber eyes seemed to understand sorrow and joy alike. Visitors sought not only books, but also the chance to meet Oliver, the cat, who read faces and soothed broken hearts. They arrived carrying burdens, and many left lighter, touched by the quiet magic that lingered in the stacks. Evelyn greeted each visitor with a warm smile, watching as Oliver greeted newcomers with his gentle purrs and soft nuzzles. It was a daily reminder that kindness, even in the smallest forms, had the power to change lives. One afternoon, a young woman named Grace came to the library. She had heard about Oliver from a friend and was desperate for a moment of peace amid her own struggles. Grief had weighed heavily on her after the loss of her brother, and the library's reputation as a haven had given her the courage to step inside. As Grace wandered through the aisles, Oliver appeared at her feet, weaving around, her legs like a thread stitching her broken heart together. She knelt down, tears welling in her eyes, and whispered, "I don't know how to be okay." Oliver settled into her lap without hesitation, his purring steady and reassuring. In that moment, the weight of the world seemed to lift just a little. Evelyn watched from a distance, knowing this was the true power of Oliver, the unspoken understanding that sometimes all we need is a quiet presence to remind us we are not alone. News of Oliver's gentle spirit spread even further. Stories passed from one town to another like treasured tales. He was no longer just a library cat, he was a symbol of resilience, a whisper of hope carried on soft paws. As the sun dipped low, casting golden light through the stained glass windows, Oliver curled up beside Evelyn. His eyes closed peacefully, his breathing slow and content. The library held its breath, knowing that while time marched on, the story of Oliver, the cat who touched the world, was woven deeply into the hearts of all who had come to love him. The final chapter. Time, as gentle and relentless as the turning of pages in a well-loved book, began to show its marks on Oliver. The once sleek and spry cat now moved with slower steps, his amber eyes softened with wisdom and memories. Though age crept quietly upon him, his spirit remained as warm and comforting as ever, a steady presence in the heart of the Maplewood Public Library. Evelyn noticed the subtle changes, the way Oliver napped longer in sunbeams, how his purrs became softer, and how he preferred quiet corners to bustling aisles. The town that had grown to adore him also sensed the approaching farewell, though no one spoke the words aloud. One chilly autumn morning, as golden leaves danced outside the library windows, Oliver curled up on his favorite windowsill. Patrons came to visit, each offering gentle pets and whispered words of gratitude for the years of comfort he had given them. Children who once clung to his fur as a lifeline now brought soft blankets and treats, hoping to return just a fraction of the love they had received. Evelyn sat beside Oliver, her hand resting lightly on his fur. "You've given us so much, little one," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "More than any of us could ever say," Oliver blinked slowly, as if understanding every word. He had been a silent guardian of countless stories, of laughter, tears, healing, and hope. Now, as his own story neared its last pages, the library held a hush of reverence and love. The community gathered one evening in the library, surrounded by shelves heavy with stories, to honor the cat who had touched their lives. They shared memories, told tales of how Oliver had helped them through dark days, and spoke of the legacy he had built with nothing more than a gentle purr and a warm heart. That night, as the library's lights dimmed and silence settled like a soft blanket, Oliver took his final breath. Peaceful, surrounded by the love of the town he had quietly transformed. Though his physical presence faded, the impact Oliver left behind was anything but gone. The warmth he had brought to Maplewood continued to ripple through the community, a testament to the power of kindness in its purest form. The story lives on. The morning after Oliver's passing dawned with a gentle stillness, as if the whole town of Maplewood was holding its breath. The library, usually alive with the soft murmurs of readers and the comforting rhythm of turning pages, felt emptier without the familiar presence of its beloved cat. Yet, even in his absence, Oliver's spirit lingered in every corner, on the sunlit windowsill, in the cozy reading nooks, and in the hearts of those he had touched. Evelyn walked through the library, her fingers trailing along the spines of books as she remembered the countless moments Oliver had been a part of. She smiled through her tears, knowing that the small grey cat had become much more than a mascot. He had been a healer, a friend, and a living story that connected the community. Inspired by Oliver's legacy, the townspeople came together to create a special corner in the library, a cozy nook filled with soft cushions, a collection of children's books about friendship and hope, and a plaque honoring the little cat who had changed their lives. It became a place where visitors could remember Oliver, share stories, and find comfort just as he had given so freely. Children who had once sat at Oliver's feet continued to visit, reading aloud to the empty nook, imagining him listening and purring softly. New visitors learned of Oliver's tale through whispered stories and warm smiles, a legacy passed down like a treasured book. Evelyn often found herself gazing out the window, where the seasons continued their quiet dance. She knew Oliver's journey had ended, but his story was far from over. It lived on in every act of kindness sparked by his gentle spirit, in every friendship forged within the library's walls, and in the countless hearts forever changed by a small cat who had touched the world. As the sun set over Maplewood, casting a golden glow through the stained glass, Evelyn whispered softly, "Thank you, Oliver. Your story will never end." And somewhere, in the quiet between the pages, the gentle purr of a library cat echoed on, forever a part of the town's soul.